Welcome to Manufacturing Talk Radio, your everything manufacturing podcast, with host and veteran manufacturing industry expert Lewis Weiss and co-host Amy Niklas. Make sure to check out our catalog of 800 previous shows on YouTube, Spotify, or wherever you're listening. Now, let's get into the episode.
Morning, everyone. This is Lou Weiss from Manufacturing Talk Radio. We're back. We are back, and we have been off the air for about a year due to all kinds of issues. But we are starting our 10th recording year as we continue to go and grow. Today we have a wrap-up discussion of what 2025, the year 2025 was economically, and what the potential forecasts and tariffs and all of that stuff going forward for 2026. Today, I have two gentlemen who've been on Manufacturing Talk Radio many, many times. This is a first. This is a television first, radio first, podcast first. I don't know. Having these two guys on at the same time. So, Cliff Waldman is with New World Economics, and Chris Kuehl is with Armada Corporate Intelligence. Sorry, I screwed that up, Chris. I'm going to let the two of you take a minute or two and give everyone a little bit of a background about who you are and what you've done and what you're going to do. So, Chris, I'm going to start with you.
Very good. Well, thank you. I'm the managing director, one of two, of Armada Corporate Intelligence. We are 26 years old. Used to be a professor of economics and finance. And one day I woke up and said, how come I talk so much about money and don't make any? So I decided to start my own company. We do a lot of public speaking. We do a lot of publications. We have several that are our own. And then we also do publications for other associations. I go out about 125, 130 times a year to give talks, primarily to manufacturers, but also accountants and bankers and construction companies and some that are just downright odd, like the Casket and Funeral Supply Association. Now, that's an interesting group, but it was one of those that showed me definitively that you cannot really say anything about the economy that applies to everybody. During the pandemic, everybody was suffering except them. And they came up and said, well, son, dead people are good for us. So, as the old Scottish proverb says, it's an ill wind that blows nobody good.
Well, thanks for that, Chris. That was really very uplifting. Cliff, why don't you give us a little bit about you and New World Economics?
Well, I've been a Washington economist since 1994. Hard to believe. I've been in D.C. for more than 30 years now. And before that, I was a state government economist in New Jersey, a state I think you know a lot about, Lou. Did my graduate work in economics at Rutgers. My two areas of expertise in economics are manufacturing, where I've done research, publications, speaking for more than 2 decades now, and small business and entrepreneurship. Prior to launching New World Economics in roughly 2019, when we officially launched, I worked for the Manufacturers Alliance for Productivity and Innovation. We had a very strong economic research group, and I did a lot of work on things that matter to manufacturing: demographics, productivity, automation, etc. I have international relationship. I've had a long relationship with South Africa. I spoke at a small business conference in Johannesburg, South Africa, in 2022. New World Economics is mostly focused on the economic research and data development needs of manufacturers, but we've done other things as well. We've recently looked at the impact of the Trump tariffs on worker safety. We've looked at the evolving economics of cannabis, which is now officially a very big issue. And we're continuing to grow. New prospects coming along all the time, and I'm hoping that we'll have a very robust economic research firm for manufacturers. But it's been expanding even beyond the manufacturing realm, which I think is good.
Great, thank you. I do have a disclaimer to make regarding politics. We, as a policy matter at Manufacturing Talk Radio, we don't talk politics because we know we're going to lose 50% of you if somebody gets insulted. So we make a point of not talking politics. That being said, talking about economics in the U.S. economy and tariffs and reshoring and all of those other things that make up the topic of today. Politics might slip into this conversation. We're not trying to, nor do we want to offend either side, left or right. That being said, gentlemen, let's kick it off. Let's talk about 2025. It's been a wild and ruckus year. Actually, me personally, I'm looking for a calmer 26, but let's see how it goes. Gentlemen, Chris?
Yeah, I mean, 25 has been an interesting year. We're ending up a lot stronger than we thought we would be. I mean, the latest GDP numbers came in, and they were exceeding even the optimistic numbers that were coming from GDP Now a week ago. So this is the first iteration. There'll probably be a revision in another couple of weeks. We'll see if it goes up or down. But it's a really good indication, and I don't mean to go off on a tangent, but I try to make a point of how big this country is, and we know that it's big, but our GDP is bigger than China, Japan, Germany, and the UK combined. So at any given point in the United States, there is a state that's in recession. There is a state that is booming. Moody's came up with a study not long ago that said there were 23 states that are on the verge of recession, and that was the headline. But I looked at it and said, well, you could also have led with there are 27 states that aren't. So what exactly is the conclusion to reach from here? And when you work in a world of data like Cliff and I do, you end up realizing that it's the local data that often matters the most. That when you're looking at the United States GDP, well, it includes California. California all by itself is the 9th largest GDP in the world. So if they're having a good year, it makes it look like we're all having a good year. Does it matter to Mississippi that California's having a good year? Probably not. So we end up having to be a little bit more careful about making grand statements. And kind of to your point about politics, we don't talk about politics in a partisan way. Politics plays a role in everything in economics, but it's it's like my German friends. I love Deutsche Welle, the German approach to things. This happened. Whether it is good or bad is for you to decide. It just happened.
A good rendition of a German accent. Cliff, give us a little insight into your backward look at 2025.
Well, Chris looked out over space, the space of the United States economy, the United States geography. I'm going to look out over time. And I would suggest that the best way to understand 2025 is to go back all the way to 2020, because we have had 5 years of volatility and confusion, the likes of which are unprecedented in the modern era. An historic pandemic, an inflation surge, the likes of which we haven't seen since the late 70s, early 1980s. Tariff chaos is about the best way you could put it. And a government shutdown that was the longest in history, and that clouded data that we very badly needed right now to see where we are and to see what 2025 looks like. I think what we have experienced is a year where you can't pull out any one data point or even a series of data points and say that's what it is. But we've had a lot of confusion. We've had a lot of volatility. great uncertainty with tariffs, and there remain great uncertainty with tariffs. We are not sure what the Supreme Court is going to do with tariffs, and that is a major issue for 2026. A consumer that has not been particularly confident in in the American economy, growing concerns about affordability, but yet data that are better than we expected on the growth side, although on the job side they have been weak, and that brings up another mountainous force this year. That's been AI. AI investment has made Wall Street a very different world from Main Street. We don't know what is it a bubble that's going to burst? It could be. We've seen that before. Is it going to create a huge productivity thrust? It may or may not. We don't, often these things are disappointing in their early stages. We thought the internet was going to, create, and computers were going to create a productivity thrust. They helped, but they took time. So this has been a year of volatility, and I think you have to think about 2025 from the perspective of the past 5 years, not just the perspective of this year.
Yeah, and I think there are some trends that have been playing out for that whole 5 years. We talk a lot about the demographic collapse that's coming at the end of this decade. You've heard economists talk about the mother of all recessions, and I've been on panels with them, and I said, come on, guys, you can't even predict till next Tuesday, much less 2030. Where did this come from? And they said, look, we're just trying to warn people. We're trying to warn that by 2030, every single boomer will have reached retirement age. Now, it doesn't mean we all retire. We're boomers. We don't know what to do with ourselves. Look at Lou. He's still working. So we're facing, particularly in manufacturing, construction, transportation, we're losing workers and we're not replacing them regularly. When you look at the GDP numbers that just got released, like Cliff pointed out, it was driven by AI and medical. Why is it being driven by medical? Because we're all getting old. This whole past year, it's like, holy cow, what happened at 72? My body blows up and I'm in the hospital 4 times. It's like I knew I should have gotten the extended warranty, but, it's too late now. But that's a factor that's been playing a role that entire 5 years and will continue to. I mean, 26 is going to be different in some respects, but not a lot. I mean, a lot of the issues that we're dealing with now, we'll be dealing with next year.
Lou, Chris talked about one end of the demographic spectrum, that is aging. That's quite critical. I want to take a minute to talk about the other end of the demographic spectrum, which is tremendous falls in fertility and birth rates, and not just in the U.S., but through much of the advanced world. And it can be a whole show. I mean, that is a complex topic, but at its root, it means that our labor force trajectory is down, not up. And I think you have to understand AI and quantum computing and 3D printing and robotics in the context of a labor force that's by any account, by any reasonable prediction, is going to shrink, is going to diminish, and that is playing a large role in both short-term and long-term business decisions, especially in the manufacturing sector, where labor force availability, labor force skills have been such an issue for so long a time.
Yeah, and you extend that to the international, and you realize that the average age in Africa, 60% of the population of Africa is under the age of 30. You look at Iran, 70% of the population of Iran is under 30. So the youth is not here, and it's not in Europe, and it's not in Japan. It isn't even in China. China is beginning to worry about demographics as well. That one-child policy has come back to hurt them. And that's a sea change.
Well, now there's a new policy happening in China where the one-child policy, not only is it gone, but they are now paying bonuses for every child that's born going forward. So they recognize that they have an aging population, and They got their economy is becoming a wild tiger, and they want to grab hold of that tail and hang on.
And you see that they're having the same problem. Other countries have tried that in the past too. And interestingly enough, the successful middle class educated people don't want more kids. So they're basically like, no, I've got a good job. I went to college. I want to spend my money on myself. And so you end up with large populations of uneducated.
That's what makes them educated. They're
Exactly.
realizing you can't have 10 kids and have a good life.
Exactly. Education equals selfishness. It's easy.
The government shutdown has, aside from causing numerous issues and problems, one of the things, of course, is that we have not had sufficient data regarding our economy. And last week they came out with the numbers. Our unemployment now is at 4.6. Inflation is at 2.3 and rising. What's your long-term prognosis on that?
Well, both of those numbers are still low. I mean, when you look at the employment historically, theoretically, if you go back to Econ 101, 6% unemployment was normal. We haven't seen that in years.
Mhm.
But it was a pretty minor, and even the U6 version of unemployment is still around 8.5%. It's usually about twice what U3 is. So it's not out of control, but the interesting thing about employment right now is that there's a lot of people that we don't quite know how to count. People who are in the gig economy, the Uber, Lyft, DoorDash bunch, they will frequently identify themselves as unemployed. You ask them, do you have a job? No. What do you mean
No.
you don't have a job? You're in that car every day. Not a real job. Don't have a boss. Don't have to drive. So we don't know if they're employed or not, but they're making money. So they're economically active, but we don't know how they're getting paid exactly.
I became more concerned about the the latest employment numbers when we got the GDP report this morning. It was much stronger than expected, 4.3%. Now there's all kinds of asterisks in there. I mean, most of it was consumer spending. Investment was weakish in there. But what concerns me particularly is that we got a generally strong GDP report, yet for the 3 months of for the third quarter, we're catching up now, but yet for the 3 months of the third quarter, payroll employment growth averaged just a little bit over 50,000. Now that's very disturbing. When we got prior to the GDP report, okay, we're going through volatility, through money here. We know we generally understand how to use economic growth. And then once we get the economic growth back, employment numbers will stabilize. We'll get back to the 150 to 200,000 that we need to employ new entrants into the labor force. But when you see a strong GDP number and very weak, employment numbers, it suggests that there's a structural change in the labor market that is not favoring employment. And that's going to create a whole set of challenges for, again, not talking politics, but for policy. That is going to create a whole set of challenges, because if we can't employ people by means of strong economic growth, what do we do? How do we employ people? And I think that the two of them together, again, it's one quarter, so take it with a grain of salt. But the two of them together, strong GDP, very, very weak employment growth, is disturbing. It suggests a set of challenges on the employment front that we haven't confronted before.
Yeah, we have a lot of people that are not capable of getting into the workforce. I mean, as much as manufacturing has complained for decades about labor shortage. And so you would assume, gee, there's a labor shortage. There must not be anybody looking for work. And then you look at the numbers and it's like, no, there's 10 million people looking for work. And they can't find work in manufacturing. 20, 30 years ago, that was not the case. Manufacturing was where you found a job when you had a high school diploma and limited education and you got your training on the job. Manufacturers don't have that luxury now. You have to be ready to go to work immediately. And so, Cliff alluded to it earlier. AI, robotics, technology, even the smallest job shops that I deal with now are investing in robots. They didn't used to. They used to just hire people, but they can't find them. So they're spending money on robots. And when a 10-person job shop splashes out for a robot, that's significant. That's a change.
Let's put one bright spot into the picture here. Well, not bright, but hopeful spot here. With all the fears about AI that were somewhat similar, at least in tenor, to the fears about what computers were going to do, the fears about what
Hmm.
3D printing would do, everything was going to replace jobs. One of the things that the internet did do is that it created a new platform for entrepreneurship.
Hmm.
Entrepreneurship since the late 1990s has fallen off, but it's picked up lately. Now, part of that is the pandemic. But the one thing that people are not, we're asking about AI and jobs. How about AI and business startups? It may create, an open platform for people to start new businesses. And particularly within the manufacturing sector, we need entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurship in manufacturing has been sliding for some time now. And I think if we think of AI as being an entrepreneurship platform for people who, that may be a better career direction than trying to get a job these days. It'll solve their problem, and it'll solve a problem that the manufacturing sector has had for some time now.
Yeah, and I agree that one of the big advantages of AI is speed to market. When you look at AI, it isn't significantly different from what we have always done. I mean, I used to compare AI to being a professor, and you had all these grad students working for you, and you'd send them off to get some information, and some of it would be good, and most of it would not be, and over time you would figure it out. Now you can do that in 3 hours and just by interrogating your AI platform. So the biggest inhibition, I used to teach entrepreneur classes, and the biggest problem was speed to market. You would end up with a good idea, you'd have some good things in place. It would take you months to get it in place. You had to get that research in place. Now AI can give you all the research you need in a day, and then you can hit the market running.
Talking about employment, non-employment, and so on, and the skill gaps and that exist in our country today. There are a lot of programs today that are trying to offset immigration issues, deportation, and that sort of thing, which in itself has caused an employment issue. Here in New Jersey, we have uh, Community College of Morristown that built a manufacturing plant, and and they take in outside work, but the whole purpose of the program is to teach kids about manufacturing and the benefits of, and which there are a lot: steady job, high income, company benefits, healthcare. Actually, healthcare, my wife told me last night in a discussion she and I had, that we're spending $23,000 a year in healthcare. I had
Hmm.
no idea, and I told her, "Don't ever tell me that again."
Yeah, exactly.
I just don't wanna hear about it, especially at the ripe old age of 82. I don't wanna talk about healthcare. But the point is that the Community College of, Morristown, has a couple of 100 students in their class, and they're actually expanding their program and building another building, going to be building another building. And somewhere actually at the end of January, I'm going to be out on location and we're going to be talking to the head of the program, because this is what government, local government, local state government have to invest. We need everything is manufactured. There is nothing that's not manufactured. We even had 2 years ago, we had one of the people from Paramount on talking about movie manufacturing. Everything is manufacturing and is critical to our economy, that we plug the holes in the dam and make sure that we are bringing the kids into a new era. And naturally, the digital world, my granddaughter, she graduated college at 22 and got a job well into the high five figures. And I was shocked. And actually, she shocked me more when she was, complaining that she has to pay taxes. Gramps, do you have any idea how much I'm paying in taxes on my income? I said, yeah. I said, that's what keeps the ball rolling. So there's all kinds of things going on with regards to employment
And we might be able to go back to things. I mean, when you get to be a ripe old age, in my case, 72, you remember high school. And when I went to high school, this was a working class school in Kansas City, and almost 60% of the kids that were in high school were going to go directly into work. They were not going to go into college. They were not going to go on to junior college or anything else. It was a manufacturing part of town. And at 11 o'clock every morning, half the school left to go to work in these manufacturing plants. That was their curriculum. So the assumption was that you were going to put at least half of your high school graduates in work in manufacturing, and good jobs. I mean, it was companies that don't. And we had Armco Steel, for God's sakes, in Kansas City, which employed like 5,000 people at one point. Well, now it's the rare school that has industrial arts. It's down to 5% in the United States still have industrial arts, and you're churning out lots of kids to go on to college. We're not quite sure what it is they're going to major in. We're learning from the student loan fiasco that if you got a degree in underwater Greek literature, you're going to have a hard time paying that loan back.
One of the things that we ran across last year when talking to newcomers into the workforce, one of the things that we need to do is educate the college graduated parents about their kids, that maybe the best route is not going to college to become a school teacher and make $40,000 a year. You can become a oil rig person manufacturer and make $150,000 and only work 30 days on and 30 days off. We had somebody who told us that story.
And then there's the two brothers I know. One of them has a law degree and the other is a plumber. And the guy with the law degree is always borrowing money from the plumber.
Perfect example. Perfect example. But I think that there's a lot of programs going on now in the education sector to help educate parents as well as students the benefits of rethinking education. And I think it's long overdue, and I think it would help the economy tremendously if, in
And
fact,
some of that discussion, Lou, is the active participation of manufacturing companies themselves in the
Exactly.
having apprenticeship programs, which has been,
absolutely.
a number of think tanks in DC, I will tell you, have been thinking quite profusely about this, because these companies have got to stop complaining they can't find people. They have to groom people. They have to create a company, a university to give what us economists refer to as firm specific human capital to function in that company. And I think that's a trend that given what's going on, that is going to accelerate more and more, where manufacturers themselves are not waiting for human capital that is trained and educated in a certain way, but is going to actively participate in their education.
Absolutely, absolutely. And last year we did speak with two companies in Vermont, manufacturing companies, who are having severe problems because the kids that grow up in Vermont leave Vermont. They only go home to ski on those rare weekends in the winter. What they did was they couldn't. There were no people. They couldn't get people. So what they had to do was attract people from out of state to come into Vermont. And what they did, these two organizations, they made a pact that each one would share in educating and apprenticeship programs within their two organizations and to bring in kids from out of state, and it worked. And the only proviso was that they both agreed with each other not to steal each other's employees when the program was over. But it was very successful, and they brought in, there was something like a 60% increase in kids coming from out of state who wanted to go into an apprentice program, wanted to go into a state where there was skiing, and they had a great 2-year program.
Yeah, Kansas is doing the same thing because if you think there's a labor shortage in manufacturing, try agriculture. This is an ag state, and 70% of the state is dependent on ag, and they cannot keep kids in these small towns. So there's been a really aggressive effort by the high schools, by the community colleges to recruit, and they're recruiting from all over the country and finding, people. Interestingly enough, it's often young families where you've got a young family, young kids who are like, no, I don't want to grow up in Chicago. I don't want to grow up in Detroit. I don't want to grow up where I think things are dangerous. I'm going to move to Great Bend, Hayes, Dodge City. Yes, I understand that Dodge City, you know that you're getting close by the smell of money. It's feedlots, but hey, it's work.
It's a great conversation, and it's a great topic. And I think that we still have a lot to talk about. So we may wind up doing this as a part 1, part 2 event. And let's continue our discussion in regards to what's coming in 2026.
Thanks again for joining us on another episode of Manufacturing Talk Radio with hosts Lewis Weiss and Amy Niklas. Before you head out, make sure to subscribe and leave us a review. For more information about the show and the manufacturing industry, head over to mfgtalkradio.com. That's mfgtalkradio.com.
Resonate.